In The Haunting of Ravenwood, a young girl named Sarah stumbles upon an extraordinary gift, the ability to communicate with spirits. At first, she is fascinated by her newfound power, believing it to be a unique and thrilling ability. However, her excitement turns to terror when she unwittingly makes contact with a vengeful ghost seeking justice for a long-forgotten crime. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dense woods that surrounded Ravenwood. Sarah Bishop, a bookish 14-year-old, couldn't resist the allure of the forest. Her wild auburn hair framed her face as she ventured deeper into the trees, leaving her small cottage behind. Birds sang their evening melodies, but something about this part of the woods felt different. As she followed a narrow, winding path, she stumbled upon a hidden clearing. The sight that met her eyes sent shivers down her spine. An ancient cemetery, forgotten by time and overgrown with gnarled roots and creeping vines, lay before her. The tombstones, crooked and moss-covered, stood like sentinels to a long-forgotten era. Sarah hesitated, but couldn't resist the magnetic pull of the graveyard. She stepped cautiously through the wrought-iron gate, its hinges groaning with age. A sense of solemn stillness surrounded her as she stepped upon the cracked and weathered stones that bore the names of the deceased. One tombstone, ornate and covered in intricate carvings, stood apart from the rest. It belonged to Amelia Blackwood, a young girl who had passed away in the early 1800s. Intrigued by the grave's timeless beauty, Sarah approached it. Her hand, trembling with curiosity, came to rest on the cold, mossy stone. As her fingers made contact, a peculiar sensation coursed through her. The air grew heavy, and a gentle, whispering breeze filled her ears. The words were unintelligible, like distant voices murmuring secrets just beyond comprehension. Sarah's eyes widened with shock. She withdrew her hand, but the sensation lingered, as if the very earth itself whispered to her. Astonished and unnerved, Sarah leaned in once more, placing her ear near the headstone. "Amelia?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The whispers intensified, growing more distinct, yet still incomprehensible. She couldn't believe it. The grave's occupant, Amelia, was trying to communicate with her from beyond the veil of death. As the evening sun sank below the horizon, Sarah sat among the gravestones, talking to Amelia's spirit. It was as though the centuries had melted away, and she was sharing a secret conversation with the long-deceased girl. The connection was mesmerizing, and Sarah couldn't pull herself away. Unbeknownst to her, the whispers reached the other spirits resting in the cemetery, and they stirred in their ethereal slumber. Ravenwood's ancient dead had awakened, and they longed to share their stories with the living. But in doing so, they would open a door to a world of malevolence that had been sealed for centuries. As the night deepened, Sarah's world shifted. The graveyards of Oakhaven Cemetery were no longer a silent realm of the dead, but a gateway to a haunted past. The journey she had begun this evening would change her life forever. Sarah's life in the picturesque town of Ravenwood continued, seemingly untouched by the secret she had uncovered in the cemetery. Each day, she would return to the woods, drawn by the whispering spirits and their tales of bygone times. Among them, she developed a peculiar kinship with Samuel Price, a jovial spirit who had met an unfortunate end in a logging accident many decades ago. Sarah's visits to the graveyard became a regular occurrence. The spirit's stories enthralled her, providing a brief respite from her otherwise solitary existence. As she listened to their tales of love, loss, and longing, she felt a growing connection to the history of her town. One evening, Sarah decided to return to Amelia Blackwood's grave, her first connection with the spirit world. She had spent countless hours with Amelia, learning about her life and her untimely death. She hoped to gain further insights into the afterlife, but as she approached the ornate headstone, something was different. A sense of unease hung in the air. "Amelia, it's Sarah again," she whispered, reaching out to the grave, her fingers barely brushing the mossy surface. "Is there anything more you'd like to tell me?" The evening breeze carried the familiar whispers, but this time they were accompanied by an undercurrent of sorrow. Sarah's brow furrowed as she listened more intently. Amelia's voice was hesitant, almost fearful. "Sarah, be careful," Amelia's voice echoed in her mind. "There's a presence, a malevolent one lurking in the shadows. He's angry, and he seeks vengeance." Sarah's heart raced as she sat in the dim light of the cemetery. "Who is this presence? What does he want?" Amelia's spectral voice trembled. "His name is Ezekiel Marsh. He was wronged in life, and now he seeks retribution from the living. Beware of him, for his anger knows no bounds." A chill crept up Sarah's spine. Ezekiel Marsh, the name sent shivers through her. She had heard the whispers of a malevolent spirit before, but this time it was different. Samuel Price had always been a friendly, guiding presence. Ezekiel, on the other hand, radiated a dark, foreboding aura. The whispers intensified, and Sarah could feel the presence drawing closer. The air grew cold, and the moonlight waned, casting eerie shadows among the gravestones. Sarah's heart raced, her breath quickening. She realized she had inadvertently summoned the vengeful spirit by mentioning his name. "Ezekiel Marsh," a sinister voice echoed through the graveyard. "You dare speak my name." Sarah's pulse quickened as the darkness coalesced into a figure. A shadowy form materialized, and within it, she could see the malevolent eyes of Ezekiel, burning with anger and hatred. He reached out for her, his spectral hand almost touching her shoulder. Sarah stumbled backward in terror, scrambling to escape the graveyard. The spirits, once peaceful and welcoming, had become her worst nightmare. She fled the haunted cemetery, her heart pounding, and Ezekiel's chilling laughter echoed behind her. Back in her cottage, Sarah barricaded herself in her room, gasping for breath. She realized the ghosts were real, and she had unwittingly attracted the attention of a malevolent spirit. Her life had taken a dark turn, and she was about to embark on a journey into the unknown. The night Sarah encountered Ezekiel Marsh had been nothing short of a waking nightmare. The malevolent spirit's chilling laughter still echoed in her mind, and the memory of his eyes, filled with anger and hatred, haunted her dreams. In the days that followed, the supernatural occurrences in Ravenwood escalated. Objects moved of their own accord, windows rattled violently in the dead of night, and whispers of despair echoed through the town's quiet streets. Neighbours exchanged fearful glances, and the atmosphere grew heavy with dread. Sarah, burdened by the knowledge of Ezekiel's malevolence, felt like a pariah. The townspeople whispered about her newfound eccentricities and the strange events that seemed to plague her presence. Friends drifted away, and her family regarded her with increasing concern. Each night, as she lay in her bed, the unsettling feeling that Ezekiel was watching her would overcome her. The malevolent spirit's presence seeped into her dreams, leaving her with sleepless nights and an ever-growing sense of foreboding. One night, as she lay awake in the dim light of her room, Sarah heard the faint sound of distant footsteps approaching. Her breath caught in her throat as the footsteps drew nearer, echoing through the empty hallways of her cottage. In the dark, she strained her ears to listen, her imagination conjuring grotesque images of the vengeful spirit's approach. The footsteps reached her door, and she could see the shadowy silhouette of a man through the crack beneath it. A cold sweat formed on her brow as the figure's hand brushed the door, slowly pushing it open. The door creaked, and there, in the dim light, stood Ezekiel Marsh. His malevolent presence filled the room, and he approached her with measured steps. Sarah's voice quivered as she spoke. "What do you want from me?" Ezekiel's spectral form flickered, and a malevolent smile twisted his features. "Justice," he hissed, the word dripping with malice. "I will have justice, and you will be my instrument." Fear coursed through Sarah's veins, and she scrambled to her feet, desperately searching for a way to escape. But Ezekiel's power was overwhelming, and her efforts were futile. He beckoned her closer, and she was drawn, as if by an invisible force, toward the malevolent spirit. Sarah's voice trembled as she begged, "Please let me go. I'll help you find the justice you seek." Ezekiel's laughter was a cruel, haunting sound. "You have no choice, dear Sarah. You will be my conduit to the living world. You will do as I command." The room seemed to darken, the air growing thick with the malevolence of Ezekiel's presence. He whispered ancient incantations, binding Sarah to his will. She had unwittingly opened a doorway to a world of malevolence, and now she was trapped within it. From that moment on, Sarah's life became a living nightmare. Under Ezekiel's sinister influence, she became an unwilling agent of his vengeful schemes. She was drawn into a world where the line between the living and the dead blurred, and malevolence seeped into every facet of her existence. Ezekiel Marsh's demand for justice would become an insurmountable burden, and the haunting nightmares of Ravenwood would continue to escalate. Sarah's desperate quest for a way to break free from the malevolent spirit's control was a race against time, for the consequences of her connection with the vengeful ghost would only grow darker. In the weeks that followed her sinister encounter with Ezekiel Marsh, Sarah's life in Ravenwood became a harrowing ordeal. She was no longer the curious girl who had ventured into the woods to converse with the spirits. Instead, she had become a pawn in the malevolent spirit's relentless quest for justice. Haunted by the spectre of Ezekiel, she found solace in the dusty archives of the town's library. It was there that she delved into Ravenwood's dark history, determined to uncover the truth about the spirit that now tormented her existence. The town's elders, who held secrets passed down through generations, became her reluctant confidants. With each revelation, Sarah learned more about the injustices of the past, the true culprits behind Ezekiel's wrongful execution, and the cursed land where the execution had taken place. Ezekiel Marsh had been framed, accused of crimes he did not commit, and his unjust death had bound his spirit to the earthly realm. The truth of his tragic fate began to unravel before her, driving her further into the depths of despair. She stumbled upon records that spoke of the twisted individuals who had conspired against Ezekiel, ensuring his grim fate. Their names, tarnished in history, became the keys to unlocking the malevolent spirit's vengeful desires. Sarah knew that in order to appease Ezekiel's wrath, she had to uncover the truth and set things right. One rainy afternoon, Sarah sat in the library, poring over ancient texts, maps, and manuscripts. The records revealed that the gallows where Ezekiel had met his unjust end still stood, decrepit and crumbling, at the cursed ground known as the Hollows. It was there that the truth had been buried, along with Ezekiel's innocence. With newfound determination, Sarah set out for the Hollows, accompanied by the chilling wind and the ominous clouds that gathered above. She knew that the malevolent spirit's hold on her life could only be broken by unearthing the past and offering Ezekiel the justice he was denied. As she ventured deeper into the cursed land, the atmosphere grew heavy with sorrow and foreboding. The gnarled trees seemed to whisper secrets of the past, and the eerie shadows of the past clung to the cursed ground like a shroud. It was a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest, and the spirits of the past watched with bated breath. Sarah arrived at the decaying gallows, its twisted timbers bearing silent witness to the injustice that had transpired there. The wind howled through the bare branches, and the ghosts of the executed prisoners seemed to wail in the breeze. She knew that to confront Ezekiel, she had to unravel the truth of what had transpired at this sinister place. The malevolent spirit's presence loomed closer, a dark figure emerging from the shadows. Ezekiel Marsh materialized, his vengeful eyes locked onto Sarah. The moment had come to offer him the justice he sought, to break the shackles that bound him to the world of the living. As Sarah faced the chilling spectre, she clung to the knowledge of the truth she had uncovered, the names of those who had conspired against Ezekiel, and the revelation of the injustices committed against him. She spoke the words that would offer him solace, the long-awaited justice that would hopefully bring an end to the malevolent spirit's torment. The air crackled with tension, and the spirits of the past watched in anticipation. The climax of her journey had arrived, and the malevolent spirit's fate would soon be sealed. The Hollows, a cursed and desolate place, bore witness to the chilling standoff between Sarah and Ezekiel Marsh. The dark, twisted timbers of the gallows, a monument to injustice, creaked ominously in the bitter wind. All around them, the tortured spirits of the executed prisoners, lingering in agony, watched the unfolding events with hollow eyes. Ezekiel Marsh, a malevolent and vengeful spectre, had finally manifested in full, his ghostly form radiating hatred and despair. He reached out for Sarah, his spectral fingers inches from her throat, but she stood her ground, resolute and unwavering. "Your justice will be served." Sarah's voice quivered, but she held her resolve. "I know the truth, Ezekiel, and I will make those responsible for your wrongful execution answer for their crimes." Ezekiel's vengeful gaze locked onto her, and his voice was a sinister whisper on the wind. "Do you think mere words can absolve the sins of the past, Sarah? They took my life, and now I shall take theirs." In a heart-pounding showdown, Sarah clung to the knowledge of the dark secrets she had uncovered. The names of the conspirators echoed in her mind, and the injustice of Ezekiel's wrongful execution weighed heavily on her heart. She uttered the incantations that would offer him the justice he had sought for centuries. The atmosphere became charged with tension as the spirits of the executed prisoners seemed to stir, their mournful cries filling the air. The malevolent spectre of Ezekiel wailed and thrashed, tormented by the revelation of his unjust death. With a final, chilling scream, Ezekiel Marsh was consumed by an otherworldly light, and his malevolent presence dissipated. The curse that had bound him to the world of the living was finally broken, and he found the peace he had long been denied. As the malevolent spirit vanished, the atmosphere in the hollows changed. The wind ceased its mournful howling, and the spirits of the executed prisoners began to fade into the ethereal mist, their suffering finally coming to an end. The town of Ravenwood, once haunted by malevolence, began to regain its peace. The supernatural occurrences that had plagued the town ceased, and the spectre of Ezekiel Marsh was no more. Sarah, who had been thrust into a world of horror and despair, was left with the heavy weight of her experiences and the knowledge that the past could be as haunting as the present. The haunting of Ravenwood had remained an unspoken secret, concealed beneath the veneer of a quiet town. A secret accidentally uncovered by Sarah at Oakhaven Cemetery, and despite the evil that once clung to Ravenwood having been expelled, its spectral remnants persists, murmuring cryptic messages to those few who share in its knowledge. Knowledge Sarah shared with me, and I've now shared with you. So, listen closely at night when you're all alone, for some secrets were best left unheard.